In a world filled with choices and opportunities, it's easy to lose sight of what truly matters. We've all been lost at some point in our lives, searching for meaning, for redemption, for a way home. The parable of the prodigal son is one of the most profound stories of forgiveness and grace found in the Bible. It's a tale not just about a son who went astray, but about a father's unwavering love. Today we'll explore this parable together, find out what it teaches us about life and how its timeless message can transform our hearts. Have you ever felt like you've gone too far, made too many mistakes, or turned your back on everything good in your life? What if I told you that no matter how far you wander, there's always a way back? Let's dive into the story of the prodigal son and discover how we can find our way home. Our story begins with a father and his two sons. The father represents God, full of love, patience, and grace. His younger son, however, was restless, eager to see the world. In the book of Luke 15:11-12, Jesus begins the parable. Jesus continued, "There was a man who had two sons. The younger one said to his father, 'Father, give me my share of the estate.' So he divided his property between them." Luke 15:11-12 NIV. Imagine this moment. The father, though heartbroken, gives his son what he asks for. The young man, filled with ambition and excitement, decides to leave his home, his family, and everything he once knew. How often have we chased after what the world promises? Wealth, excitement, and independence, only to find that it doesn't bring the fulfillment we seek. The prodigal son believed the grass was greener on the other side, unaware of the lessons that awaited him. The son journeyed to a faraway land where he squandered his inheritance on wild living. Luke 15:13 tells us, "Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had, set off for a distant country, and there squandered his wealth in wild living." Luke 15:13 NIV. In his pursuit of pleasure, the son lost everything. What he thought would bring him joy and freedom left him empty and broken. The wealth he had once depended on was gone, and soon he found himself in desperate need. The son sits alone, surrounded by lavish parties and new friends who slowly disappear as his wealth diminishes. The scene shifts to him wandering the streets, tired and hungry. How often do we invest our time, energy, and resources in things that don't last? The son chased temporary happiness, but in the end, he found himself lost and alone. In life, we too may find ourselves at a crossroads, realizing that what we pursued didn't bring the joy we hoped for. Famine hit the land, and the son was left with nothing. Desperate, he took a job feeding pigs, a humiliating task, especially for a Jewish man. In Luke 15:15-16 we read, "So he went and hired himself out to a citizen of that country, who sent him to his fields to feed pigs. He longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but no one gave him anything." Luke 15:15-16 NIV. The prodigal son had hit rock bottom. Sometimes it's in our lowest moments that we realize how lost we are. In the midst of his despair, the son had a revelation. He remembered his father's house, where even the servants had enough to eat, and in that moment, he made a decision. In Luke 15:17-19, the son comes to his senses. When he came to his senses, he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have food to spare, and here I am starving to death? I will set out and go back to my father and say to him, 'Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants.'" Luke 15:17-19 NIV. With humility and a repentant heart, the son decides to return home, not as a son, but as a servant. He believed he had lost his right to be called a son, yet he longed for the safety and love he had once known. Sometimes we too feel unworthy. We believe our mistakes have disqualified us from love, grace, and forgiveness. But the truth is, there's always a way back. no matter how far we've wandered, God's love is greater than our failures. As the son approached, his father saw him from a distance and ran to meet him. In Luke 15:20 we read, verse appears on screen, but while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. He ran to his son, threw his arms around him and kissed him. Luke 15:20 NIV. The father, tears streaming down his face, embraces his son who collapses in his arms, overwhelmed by the love and forgiveness he did not expect. Without hesitation, the father forgave his son not because of what the son had done, but because of his love. This is a powerful representation of God's grace. No matter how far we've gone, his arms are always open. God's love is unconditional. He doesn't hold our mistakes against us, and he is always ready to welcome us home. In life, we may find ourselves lost, but we are never too far from the reach of grace. The father didn't stop at forgiveness. He ordered a grand celebration for his son's return. In Luke 15:22-24 we read, but the father said to his servants, quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. So they began to celebrate. Luke 15:22-24 NIV. This celebration shows us that when we return to God, it's not with shame or guilt, but with joy. Heaven rejoices when even one sinner repents. This story teaches us about forgiveness, redemption, and the boundless grace of God. But the story doesn't end here. The older son, who had stayed and worked faithfully by his father's side, was angry when he heard about the celebration. In Luke 15:28-30, we read, the older brother became angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, look, all these years I've been slaving for you and never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours who has squandered your property with prostitutes comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him. Luke 15:28-30 NIV. The older son represents those who may struggle with envy or a sense of injustice. It's easy to feel overlooked when we see others receiving grace, but the Father's response is a reminder that love and grace are not limited. He says in Luke 15:31-32, my son, the Father said, you are always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. Luke 15:31-32 NIV. The parable of the prodigal son is not just a story from the past. It's a message for all of us today. Whether you see yourself in the younger son, lost and searching for a way back, or in the older son, struggling with bitterness, this story reminds us that God's love is greater than our failures, our pride, and our mistakes. Wherever you are in your journey, remember that it's never too late to come home. Embrace the grace that is freely given, and know that you are loved, forgiven, and valued. Share this message with someone who needs to hear it today, and let's spread the hope and love found in this powerful story. Remember, no matter how lost you feel, you are never too far from home.